Okay, let's go.
The story of 1943 Lincoln steel wheat penny. The year was 1943, a time when the United States was fully immersed in the chaos and urgency of World War II. Factories ran day and night producing tanks, planes, bullets, and artillery shells. Every resource was being redirected to the war effort, and metals that once seemed abundant suddenly became treasures of national security. Copper, in particular, was desperately needed. It was the lifeblood of ammunition production, essential for shell casings that would thunder across the battlefields of Europe and the Pacific. The war machine consumed copper at a staggering pace, and the U.S. Mint, which had traditionally used it to strike the humble 1-cent coin, found itself at a crossroads. Faced with this dilemma, the government and the mint took a bold step. For the first time in American history, they abandoned copper for the penny and replaced it with a far less glamorous material, steel, coated with a thin layer of zinc to ward off rust. The result was a coin unlike anything Americans had ever seen, a penny that shone not with the familiar reddish-brown glow of copper, but with a cold, silvery sheen. It looked strange in the palm of one's hand, almost as though a dime had been miscolored. This decision gave birth to what we now call the steel penny, a coin that remains a numismatic legend, precisely because it embodies the sacrifices of the home front during World War II. The Denver Mint was among the trio of mints tasked with striking this unusual coin, alongside Philadelphia and San Francisco. Each coin bore a mark of its origin. On the 1943 D issue, beneath the bold date, sat a modest but clear D mint mark, forever tying it to Denver's output during one of the most turbulent years in world history. Design details. Despite the change in composition, the face of the coin remained familiar, almost comforting. On the obverse, Abraham Lincoln's portrait, designed by David Brenner in 1909, still gazed outward with a calm and steady expression. His profile, framed against the steel-gray surface, looked sharper and colder than usual, a fitting reflection of the wartime mood, when every American was asked to steel themselves for sacrifice. The reverse carried the same wheat stalks that had graced pennies since 1909. Two graceful sheaves of wheat bent inward, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, a simple yet powerful reminder of national unity. Above them, the proud inscription E pluribus unum, out of many one, seemed to resonate even more strongly in those dark years. The technical specifications told their own story. Each coin measured 19.05 millimeters in diameter, the same as its copper predecessors, but its weight dropped to 2.7 grams compared to the usual 3.11 grams. This difference was subtle in the hand, but noticeable to careful collectors. The steel core, coated with a fragile layer of zinc, was meant to protect the coin from rusting. Yet, as millions would discover, that protection often failed. When the zinc wore thin, the steel beneath began to corrode, leaving the coin spotted, brown, or even eaten through with time. And then there was the appearance, the silvery gray tone that made many Americans mistake these pennies for dimes. Children would pick them up and marvel. Adults would complain about confusing change, and shopkeepers often grumbled about their unfamiliar look. But for all its oddness, the design retained a deep sense of tradition. Even in steel, Lincoln's penny carried the same spirit of continuity that had begun in 1909, minting and production. The Denver Mint produced a staggering 217,660,000 steel pennies in 1943. On paper, this number seems immense, and indeed it ensured that the coins would never be considered rare in the traditional sense. Steel pennies passed freely from hand to hand across the nation that year. Children bought candy with them, soldiers' families used them to stretch ration book allowances, and they jingled in the pockets of Americans who lived through the war. But despite their abundance, the steel pennies were never loved. For one, they were impractical. The zinc coating often wore off quickly, exposing the steel core, which rusted readily. A jar of steel pennies left in a damp basement or carried too long in a sweaty pocket could corrode badly in a matter of months. Worse still, the coins often stuck together in counting machines and were sometimes rejected by vending machines. And because of their pale color, many people mistook them for dimes, causing endless confusion in shops and banks. The mint had intended the steel cent to be a patriotic measure, a small sacrifice in the name of victory. Yet to the average American, it felt more like a nuisance. By the end of the war, the experiment was abandoned, and in 1944, the familiar copper penny returned, this time made from melted-down shell casings from the battlefront, a symbolic recycling of war back into peace. Small blue diamond collector value today. Although millions were minted, the 1943 D steel cent holds an enduring fascination for collectors. Its value, however, varies drastically depending on condition. In well-worn, circulated grades, these coins might fetch only 10 cents to $1, making them affordable souvenirs of history. But in pristine, untouched mint state, the story changes. Coins that still gleam with their original zinc coating, free from rust and spots, can bring in $3 to $10 for average uncirculated examples. Higher-grade pieces, certified at MS 65 or better, often command $20 to $50 or more, as collectors vie for the sharpest strikes and cleanest surfaces. Truly exceptional coins, with brilliant silvery luster and flawless fields, can climb into the hundreds of dollars. But the real intrigue lies not in the ordinary, but in the errors and rarities that surround the 1943 penny. Small blue diamond errors and varieties. 1. The legendary copper penny, 1943 wrong planchet error. By sheer accident, a few leftover copper planchets from 1942 found their way into the presses at Denver, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. Pennies struck on these copper blanks instead of steel are among the most famous errors in U.S. coinage. Only a tiny handful are known, but when one surfaces, it can sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Owning a 1943 copper cent is considered the dream of many collectors. 2. Clip planchets, off-center strikes, and double dies. Like all mass-produced coins, mistakes occurred during minting. A clipped planchet, where part of the blank is missing, an off-center strike, or a double die, where the design is duplicated slightly, can make a steel cent significantly more valuable. 1943 on dit repincht mint marque. Some Denver coins show the D mint mark punched twice, a small detail that collectors hunt eagerly. While not nearly as valuable as the copper error, these varieties add charm and uniqueness to the otherwise common steel penny. Key collecting notes. Today, the 1943 D steel cent stands as both a curiosity and a relic of sacrifice. Many of the coins have rusted or corroded beyond recognition, so those that remain bright and silvery are treasured. They are not scarce, but they hold immense historical symbolism, a coin that reminds us of a nation's resilience during its greatest trial. Collectors who assemble a full set of Lincoln wheat cents, 1909 to 1958, always include the steel pennies as a centerpiece. The trio of 1943 coins from Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco tells a complete story of wartime America. And when a collector holds a 1943 D in their hand today, they're not just holding a coin. They're touching the memory of a world at war, a mint under pressure, and a people who adapted to hardship with determination. The 1943 D. Lincoln steel wheat penny may not be rare, but it is unforgettable. Born out of necessity during the darkest days of World War II, it reflects both the ingenuity and the compromises of its time. For most Americans in 1943, it was an annoyance, a penny that didn't quite feel right. But for us today, it is a bridge to the past, a reminder of sacrifice, resilience, and the way even the smallest objects can carry the weight of history. In everyday grades, it may be worth only a few cents. In mint brilliance, it might climb to respectable collector prices. And in the rarest forms, like the elusive copper error, it can reach a fortune. Yet beyond dollars and cents, its true worth lies in the story it tells. The story of a nation that turned its pennies to steel because copper was needed for victory. The story of a 1953 D. Lincoln wheat penny. In the heart of post-war America, during a time when industry thrived and the nation was redefining its place as a world power, a small but enduring symbol of history rolled off the presses at the Denver Mint. The 1953 D. Lincoln wheat penny. On its own, it weighed only 3.11 grams and measured 19 millimeters across. Yet in that small space, it carried the image of Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator and the pride of a nation that had survived depression and war. The coin was crafted from a simple alloy, 95% copper, with a balance of tin and zinc. To most Americans, it was just a penny, a coin spent in candy shops, tucked into piggy banks or rattling in purses. But to collectors and historians today, it represents far more, a tangible link to the United States of the early 1950s, a decade of optimism, change, and growth. A nation in transition. By 1953, the scars of World War II were fading into memory. The United States had emerged victorious, its factories and cities booming. The suburbs were growing, highways expanding, and the first flickers of modern American consumer culture were being born. Yet every great story leaves its mark, even on something as small as a coin. Copper, the very lifeblood of the Lincoln cent, had been a critical wartime resource only a decade earlier. During 1943, the Mint had even experimented with steel cents to save copper for ammunition and military equipment. By the early 1950s, copper had returned to everyday coinage, but its value and availability were still closely watched. The 1953 D penny, struck in staggering numbers, over 700 million pieces, was part of this new era of abundance. The Denver Mint, nestled against the backdrop of the Rocky Mountains, shouldered a massive part of this production. The little d under the date marked the coin's origin, distinguishing it from those struck in Philadelphia or San Francisco. While to many it was a tiny detail, to collectors, that mint mark is a whisper from the past, telling the story of where each penny began its journey. The design, a tribute in miniature. The obverse, or front, of the 1953 D penny bears the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln. Designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Lincoln's birth, the portrait had already become one of the most recognized designs in American coinage. Lincoln faces to the right, his gaze calm but resolute. Above him arcs the motto, "In God We Trust." To his left sits the word liberty, and to the right the date, 1953, followed by the small but meaningful D. The reverse design gives the wheat penny its popular nickname. Two stylized stalks of wheat frame the words 1 cent and United States of America. Above them, the Latin motto E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one, reminds the holder of the coin of the unity of the states. Simple yet elegant, the design symbolized both abundance and strength, qualities America cherished in the 1950s. Condition and value, from pocket change to treasure. At first glance, the 1953 D wheat penny might not seem special. With so many minted, most ended up jingling in change jars, buying bubblegum, or paying for bus rides. Today, worn examples are still found in circulation, worth only a few cents above face value, perhaps 3 to 20 cents depending on condition. But the story doesn't end there. Copper is a metal that changes with time. Exposure to air and handling causes most pennies to darken into brown or reddish-brown tones. Only the rarest survivors retain their original fiery, red luster, the brilliant shine they had when they first left the mint. Collectors prize these pieces above all others, paying several dollars for lower, uncirculated grades and much more for higher ones. In fact, in grades like MS-67 Red, the 1953 D penny transforms from an ordinary coin into a true rarity, fetching $1,500 or more at auction. Such coins are like time capsules, as though they escaped the grasp of circulation entirely, preserving a perfect snapshot of 1953. Errors, varieties, and the thrill of the hunt. Part of the magic of coin collecting lies in the unexpected. Even among millions of coins, mistakes slip through, and these errors often become treasures. For For the 1953 D Lincoln cent, collectors look for things like repunched mint marks, RPMs, where the tiny D under the date was accidentally struck more than once, leaving behind a doubled or shadowed letter. Others might show off-center strikes, where the design drifts to one side, leaving part of the blank planchet visible. Some reveal die cracks or cuds, raised lines, or blobs of metal formed when the dies began to wear out or break. Each error tells a unique story of the minting process, a moment where precision faltered and accident gave birth to rarity. Depending on the error's type and clarity, a 1953 D penny that might otherwise be worth pennies can suddenly command tens, hundreds, or even thousands of dollars. Collectability, a common coin with hidden gems. Despite its massive mintage, the 1953 WWII penny remains an important piece for collectors. It may not be rare in circulated form, but its significance lies in completing a set of Lincoln cents and in the pursuit of exceptional specimens. The real treasures are found in 1. High-grade red coins, with blazing copper color undimmed by time. 2. Error coins, the quirks of minting that make each find unique. For many collectors, the journey of finding a pristine 1953 D penny feels like a treasure hunt, sifting through rolls, scouring flea markets, or searching family coin jars. While millions exist, only a handful remain in the kind of untouched condition that sets collectors' hearts racing. A penny worth remembering. So what makes the 1953 D Lincoln cent special? On the surface, it's an ordinary wheat penny, born of copper and struck in the millions. But within its modest frame lies a story of post-war America, of industrial growth, and of a nation honoring its past while stepping into a prosperous future. For the collector, it's both a challenge and a reward. Most are common, but a select few, glowing red, flawless, or bearing rare minting quirks, transform into true treasures. Each one is a piece of history that has survived the passing decades, carrying with it the quiet dignity of Abraham Lincoln's image and the endurance of American coinage. The 1953 WWII penny is more than copper. It's a storyteller. It whispers of 1950s America, of the Denver Mint's relentless presses, and of the hands it passed through on its long journey. To hold one today is to touch not just a coin, but a fragment of American history, small, humble, but enduring.